And I'll start out. I came across a quote by Marianne Williamson that kind of tied in with the direction, or at least the message, the direction I was going yesterday with going over the Beatitudes. And I realized that I want to clarify the Beatitudes on another level. But the quote from Marianne Williamson: "Until we've met the monsters in ourselves, trying to slay them in the outer world, and we find that we cannot. For all darkness in the world stems from darkness in the heart. And it is there that we must do our work." Pretty powerful piece of understanding. Thank you, Marianne. And my offering is that this literally is what is gripping our culture and creating the insanity that is just moving so massively throughout the world. And it's time for us to wake up. You know, the whole thrust of this work is the invitation to people to step in and actually do their work, actually face what's going on inside themselves and clean it up. So that's the bottom line of what we're here to do. And this internal drama that for most people is totally and completely relegated to the unconscious is the root of conflict in marriages. It's the root cause of all wars. And if you want true resolution of the insanity gripping so many in our world, the separation, the conflict, the violence, it's literally taken over almost half the population of America. And those who are willing to perpetrate violence for what they think is a cause, and they have no idea their violence is a reflection of their own unresolved, hidden internal conflict and trauma. You've heard me utilize the quote for Francois Fenelon. I don't know exactly what year this was written, but the man lived from 1651 to 1715, so we know it wasn't later than 1715. So it's a little better than 300 years ago. This man described what must be faced and resolved in each one of us. Here's what Fenelon said, and if you haven't heard me read it before, or if you had, here's a reminder. As the light increases, we see ourselves to be worse than we thought. We're amazed at our former blindness as we see issuing forth from the depths of our hearts a whole swarm of shameful feelings, like filthy reptiles crawling from a hidden cave. Could have believed that we had harbored such things, and we stand aghast as we watch them gradually appear. But while our faults diminish, the light by which we see them waxes brighter, and we're filled with horror. Bear in mind, for your comfort, that we only perceive this malady when the cure begins. In other words, you don't start to see it until you start to do your work. And that's one of the reasons I offer why many people turn away from the work, or at least for a time period. I've seen it take as long as 10 years for somebody to come back and say, "What was that you said?" Carl Jung says it this way. The demise of society, and you look at the breakdown that's happening in our culture today. He says the demise of society won't be a physical threat, but instead mass delusion, a collective psychosis of sorts. Greater than all the physical dangers are the tremendous effects of delusional ideas, which are yet denied all reality by our world-blinded consciousness. Our much vaunted reason and boundlessly overestimated will are sometimes powerless in the face of unreal thoughts. Anything new, and here he's referring to any phenomena that happens. We've seen, for instance, a political phenomena happen in our world. It can be understood through this mechanism. He says anything new should always be questioned and tested with caution, for it may very easily turn out to be only a new disease. That's why it's impossible without mature judgment. True progress, is impossible without mature judgment. So we've seen a phenomenon, without getting into the politics of it, but a political phenomenon happen into which millions have projected their psychosis and are willing to kill their fellow men. I mean, you look at how many people in the last 5 years, have suggested civil war, have threatened civil war, and you see exactly what's happening through this mechanism that Jung is elucidating. Again, anything new should always be questioned and tested with caution, for it may very easily turn out to be only a new disease. That is why true progress is impossible without mature judgment. Carl Jung noted that the wolf inside the man was far more a threat to human existence than external forces. When mental forces become so toxic as to harm our overall well-being on an individual and collective level, a psychic epidemic can result, Jung says. And that's exactly what we're witnessing threatening this country today and threatening our world. It's really a global phenomenon right now. Jung warned that modern society was prone to collapse due to a pandemic of delusional ideas. Remember, we've talked so often, the opening words in the book of John, don't say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh, but say in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. Jung wrote, quote, "The man who's unconscious of the historical context and let slip his link with the past is in constant danger of succumbing to the crazies and delusions engendered by all novelties. The past always has a way of returning. Those who don't learn or can't remember it are doomed to repeat it," said a man named Steve Berry in the book, The Charlemagne Pursuit. In the past, it needs to be engaged and resolved or repeated. And if we tie this with yesterday's conversation, remember we brought forward the meaning of the word tuvehun, the word that's the first statement in each of the Beatitudes. The Greeks translate as blessed are they, but tuvehun. What Yeshua was talking about 2,000 years ago is you've got to have a solid neural structure upon which to plant your life, or you're in trouble. So the past that needs to be engaged or resolved or repeated is the unresolved hidden traumas within. And I'm talking about what threatens the whole culture. Jung was talking about. I won't make that my idea. I'm repeating what Jung said. This is a threat to the whole world. We need to make a set of tools for resolution of this generational trauma that people carry. A part of our culture, or our culture steps up to repeated doom, repeated wars, repeated trauma. Generational patterns that the individual, without the tools and skills for resolution, must project into their brains images of others, spouses, children, bosses, leaders, sinners, enemies, political foes, whoever it happens to be. Literally will project it into their brain's image of anyone. Anyone who's handy will become the screen upon which they project. Those things must be faced and removed from each individual, or it gets passed to the next generation. This cumulative, seemingly unconquerable trauma must be dealt with, and it must be dealt with within. Man is a myth maker. He lives by his myths. Each of us, and here, tie this together with yesterday, and I'm going to go back to the Beatitudes again today. But tie this back to the word tuvehun and take that one component. Remember the word tuvehun, again, the Greeks translate as blessed are they. There's no such concept in Aramaic. It says a latent neural structure implanted by God to guide you to happiness and well-being. There's an underlying neural structure that is at the root of all output of every mind. So everybody's got a myth they live by. Everybody's got a neural structure that's active, and if it's not the one that the Creator implanted, it's going to tend to lead to crazy. So man is a myth maker. He lives by his myths, which are at the root of the output, every output from the mind. Religion often is the provider of the governing myth, which binds people together. As millions give up religion, they make up their own myth, their own religion to live by. And often the most easily selected collective myth is, my problems, my pain, my unfathomable turmoil is your fault. If I can just get rid of you, kill you, divorce you, disown you, my problems will be solved. That's the myth that millions are living by. Problem with this almost universal solution is that the pain being felt is internally caused, and the false idea of external resolution is just totally and completely fake. I mean, it's more fake than the fake news that everybody's talking about. The deep internal work of healing and returning to our essence as love, returning to goodwill, returning to caring for each other as natural humans do, is the only solution. There's a psychologist named Bainbridge, and he said, you can't not have a central myth to live by. It's the collective underpinning of societies. People who come together have a collective myth. And if the collective myth holds that somebody else is an enemy, that somebody else is the problem, then there'll always be some kind of war, whether that's war within the family, family conflict, family abuse, family divorce. It's time for us to wake up and step away from the ignorance of this principle. And become aware that when one understands how the mind works, and the profound understanding that comes from the Aramaic language is just amazing. And what happens is when people are under stress, you know, there's been a great deal of stress with this whole pandemic, losing of a job, financial difficulties. How many people have lost their homes? You know, you look at that 2008, millions of people were wiped out. People having trouble feeding themselves, conflict in a relationship, or at least what appears to be conflict in a relationship, what the mind projects as conflict in a relationship. There's where people tend to find, you know, a comfort in some kind of extremist ideology. Oh, it's the bad guys. It's the whatever, you know, group one happens to have a prejudice against. If we're in the camp of the KKK, it's the white weakling who calls themselves a supremacist that thinks that they're the victim of the black man. It moves in circle after circle after circle. And until we deal with the darkness within ourselves and stop projecting it onto others, there's going to be deep difficulty. And I realized that when I completed yesterday, I was, you know, it's the first time I've presented the Beatitudes, taking the different translations from, you know, Yaham and Dale, and putting them together with the work that we've done from the Kabor's manuscript and the poster that we publish. And by the way, there is, pardon me, on our website, under our products, you can purchase a 10 by 13. It's a standard frame size. You can, go to the drugstore or the frame store and get a standard, relatively inexpensive frame. But it's a really nicely made parchment. It's stiff parchment paper with two colors of red and blue that, are a nice reminder to have right there in front of you. And so what I'd like to is go back over those without integrating all of the different translations. I realized that may, for someone who's totally new to the idea of the Aramaic Beatitudes, might have ended up being a little confusing. And so, pardon me, I'm just going to cover from a singular source, and that's from this poster. I'm going to verbatim go over it and explain as we go. So, tuvehun, the first word in each of the Aramaic Beatitudes, is historically interpreted as a bestowed blessing. Yeshua's words spoke instead of an earned reward. He delivered simple and practical teaching in his native tongue, Aramaic. In the 6th century, all known Aramaic Bibles were burned, and many foreign ideas, unsupported by his actual words, were put into his mouth. As Yeshua's teachings passed from Aramaic to Greek to Latin to Old English, and finally to modern English, increasing numbers of distortions occurred. So this explanation of the Beatitudes is based on, and it's as faithful as possible to the actual 1st century Aramaic words of Yeshua. We actually, there was a group of 25 of the world's top Aramicists who did this translation work. I simply assembled it for the poster, but 25 of the world's top Aramicists spent, I don't even know how much time, eons of time, collectively, working to decode the 1st century meanings of Yeshua's words in the Beatitudes. And believe me, it doesn't look anything like the Greeks told us it was. When you hear it and you compare it, you can kind of see, well, you can sort of see there's a link there, but it is like the weak sister of the actual Aramaic words. So we're looking to be as true as possible to the 1st century meanings of the words. So what it shows, we've been taught the Beatitudes, at least I was, that the Beatitudes were kind of this nice philosophy. Kind of like we've been told that the Lord's Prayer was a prayer. And the Lord's Prayer is not a prayer at all. The Lord's Prayer is a set of instruction, and so are the Beatitudes. They're instructions and methods for evaluating progress and supporting us in achieving this exciting, reachable goal. And here's where Yeshua provided the how-tos for living the greatest and second commandments, the keys to peace, life, and health. His objective, you go back and you think about this, Yeshua's objective was so urgent that he repeatedly used this word tuvehun in front of every beatitude. And remember that this was his first appearance. This was his first public teaching. So, got to be a pretty important word. So, this statement before each beatitude more accurately carries the lost meaning of Yeshua's word, tuvehun. So this would be a very close English approximation. God implanted in your mind neural structures which will guide you when they are active. If they are active, you who follow these instructions will come into conscious possession of and be able to use this latent guidance system designed to make available thoughts and actions that will increase your happiness and well-being. So what he's saying is, rather than your religious myth, rather than your culture's myth, rather than your family's myth, rather than the world myth, And, we live with a very profound, I talked about this last week, world myth that the good guy kills the bad guy and is the hero. And I was acknowledging Disney for their movie Spider-Man, No Way Home, I believe was the subtitle, where the different Spider-Man characters who each carry rage at the pained loss of a loved one and blames one of the supervillains. Disney's replacing the world myth that the good guy kills the bad guy. It's so profound. It's like, to me, it's a signal that there is hope for our world when somebody like Disney steps up to the plate and says this world myth is crap. The good guy kills the bad guy and is the hero, and very powerfully brings a very identifiable trauma for each of these characters. And if you remember, if you weren't part of the radio show last week, there's 3 different young men who, and I assume they had to shift them out each time they come out with a new movie because it wasn't a 17-year-old kid anymore. But in this latest, the 2021 Spider-Man, No Way Home or No Path Home, they bring all 3 of the young men who've played that part together, each one having lost a loved one to a supervillain, and each one literally, and they very powerfully show them raging in their murderous rage, wanting to kill the supervillain. And yet they're reminded, interestingly enough, by Mom, reminds them that that's not who they are. Reminds them that what human life does is it lives as the presence of love and brings healing even to the arch enemy, even to those that one hates the most. So again, this word tuvehun, the Creator implanted in your mind neural structures which will guide you when they are active. If this is your myth, if they are active, you who follow these instructions will come into conscious possession of and be able to use the latent guidance system designed to make available thoughts and actions that will increase your happiness and well-being. And Disney very powerfully demonstrates the healing of each of the villains, that these young men hate and want to murder. And in the world mind, justifiably hate and want to murder because they are villains. They are evil. They are all the things that those who haven't dealt with their own evil project into their brain's image of others. And so in the poster, we leave the Aramaic word in Aramaic, and then in brackets, the English translation. So the first one, you who have, in the Aramaic word, is miskini, which means home, in Ruka. And Ruka are the active forces from God. So you whose home, instead of our home being in our mind and in the world myth or our own personally made up myth that somebody else is the problem in our lives, your home is in the active forces from God, for yours is Malkuta Dishmea, a heavenly estate. Now, listen to what the Greeks called that one. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, do you think anybody could, now I can see, once I've got the brain cells from the Aramaic, I can kind of see where the Greeks got their misunderstanding. But could you imagine anybody ever getting from, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, getting to you who have a home in the active forces from God, and then if you do that, yours will be a heavenly estate? It's a pretty big leap. Then the Abili, second beatitude. So tuvehun goes before this. You who love truth and profess your errors and the errors of your society, you shall beniti behun, freed of mental stress. So that's the second beatitude. If you are, and pardon me, I should change that word, love truth to honor truth. That's that old error kicking in. Let me just change that. So those who honor truth over and above everything else and are willing to look at their own errors. In other words, you've got to go in and process yourself inside. The overlays that have made this neural structure unconscious have to be processed out of you. This is a set of instructions for how to get that neural structure active again. So the second beatitude says, you've got to honor truth. You've got to own your errors and the errors of your society, not just your own. But a big part of what creates the world myth of violence that people live by has come from the culture. He says if you do that, you're going to be free of mental stress. Now, let's listen to the Greek idea, and you can see how it's the weak sister. So much is lost in translation. So the Greeks would translate as, blessed are those mourning their wrongs, for they will be comforted. Can you imagine ever getting to being cured of mental stress because you honored truth and looked into your errors and the errors of your society from that Greek idea? Could anybody follow that beatitude and get this neurostructure active that Yeshua was giving instructions for doing? It's silly. I mean, it's so profoundly inferior would be the word to Yeshua's instruction. And you know, if Yeshua sat in virtually every church in the Western world today, I'm talking about everyone. If your myth says, no, we've got the real one, bring it to me. I want to see it. I want to see if it brings this man actually forward, because I haven't seen it yet. But Yeshua would say it's all Greek to me. And, you know, this particular mistranslation really demonstrates how weak the Greek ideas are. Blessed are those mourning their wrongs, for they will be comforted. And what he actually wanted to offer you was, you who honor truth, profess your errors and the errors of your society, you'll be freed of mental stress. The next one is you who have, so here's the next instruction for activating that neurostructure that undergirds your happiness, your well-being, the work each of us needs to do. He says, you who have, and the Aramaic word is makik, humility, which in Aramaic is the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with the good desires of others, you shall, and the Aramaic word is nartun, gain the earth. In other words, you're going to be on top of it. You're going to have a life of abundance and well-being if you can do this. What is it you need to do? You've got to have the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with the good desires of others. You've got to be able to see them before you can cooperate with them. And that if you do, because life is about survival of the most cooperative, not about survival of the fittest, in Aramaic, gain the earth. The game's going to be yours. Now let's see if anybody could make the leap. Let's see if you could hear this in Greek and make the leap to what we just shared. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Can you imagine getting from that to those who have the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with the good desires of others, for you will gain the earth? And notice that it's an active word. Inherit's kind of passive. Well, you see, you'll just inherit it. Somebody will give it to you. There's nothing you need to do, would say the Greeks. That's what that inherit word is. But in Aramaic, it's an active thing. You're going to gain it because you have taken action. And then the next beatitude in Aramaic uses the word kenuta, which is a hunger. You've got to hunger. You've got to want this. You who hunger for the mind structure underlying the attitude, judgment, and behavior described as just and fair behavior between people. Your mind can't output a perceptual construct. Remember the Harvard research that says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness, into your perceptual construct is 9 bits. You can't have one that's going to incline you toward just and fair behavior unless that mind structure, that, again, remember that's the word in Aramaic is that tuv, unless that tuv is active, you're not going to do judge fair and just behavior between people. And what this Beatitude promises is if you have that mind structure, then you're going to obtain it. Pardon me, you're going to attain it. And once again, let's look at the Greek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Now you listen to how much righteous indignation and how much conversation there is about righteous anger, and now you've got a Greek mindset that's going to result in exactly the kind of culture we've got. One where brother is against brother, mother is against son and daughter. I mean, how many of us have read and heard or know somebody who, over this whole myth that one political game is better than another political game, and there is no in between, and there is no cooperation, to hell with the culture, to hell with bringing forward what's good for people. We need to have this over that. How do you get to, here's how you get just and fair behavior between people from a Greek idea of blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. You look at how that word righteousness is used in our culture. It says they will be filled. And you look at how many people who supposedly are about the teachings of Yeshua, the vilest verbal diarrhea on the planet, and call it good. How does that happen? And then the next beatitude, again, this is preceded by tuvihun, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being, will become your conscious possession. You who have rakma, that's the Aramaic word. The English translation would be pure love, encompassing judgment and behavior. There's a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain. When this filter is active, then the actual presence of love enters the human form, and it becomes that which governs the whole mind. So it's going to cover judgment and behavior. And what it says is if you have that active in you, then you're going to receive it. The act of having this, whatever anybody else is doing, if you bring this first and foremost, and when they said to Yeshua, what's first in the law? Well, how do you get to be a human being? In essence, is what they're asking. He doesn't say love your neighbor, love God as yourself. What he says is have Rahma, have this filter, this gateway open that brings human life into your human form. So once again, let's listen to the Greek and see if we could make the leap from blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Let's see if we can get that out of you who have Rahma, the gateway for pure love, encompassing judgment and behavior. You will therefore receive Rahma. It's a pretty big leap. The next beatitude, you who have, in the the Aramaic word here is dadsian, a completely purified mind, you will mikhazun, comprehend Allah, the invisible source of creation. You want a relationship with the Creator? Here's how you do it. You've got to clean hostility and fear out of your mind. You must have a completely purified mind. When you do, you will comprehend. You will have the ability, at least to the degree that any human being could have the ability. If you look at a fly is not going to quite have the same ability, I think we're safe to assume, that a human would at comprehending their place in the creation and the Creator. So what this beatitude promises is that if you clean up the hostility and fear projections of your mind, and you look at how many people project into their brain image of God I can remember, this goes back, oh geez, almost 40 years ago. It was one of the first years that Heartland was open. There was a young man. He was probably late 30s, and he was there for the whole summer. We did a 65-day intensive, and he was there for the whole summer. And it was somewhere two-thirds of the way through the summer that he broke down. I mean, he just completely broke down. I mean, to the point of wailing. And what he touched into was how much he hated God. He was a good Catholic boy, and his mother had cancer. And they told him if he would pray hard enough, his mother would be cured. And his mother died. I don't remember exactly what age he was, 4, 5, 6. And he fervently believed these authorities who told him if he prayed hard enough. So now, obviously, he's failed, and he's the cause of his mother's death. You want to talk about hate for God? If one never cleans that up, if one never purifies their mind of trauma, and when you recognize that unresolved trauma is passed from generation to generation to generation, listen to that piece that I read from Fenelon, the vipers and the insanity. What does he call them? Filthy reptiles in the mind. Think about what, look at just your life and the people you know and what they've been through. And we got it pretty good. I mean, yes, there are children going to bed hungry in America, sadly, insanely, in the wealthiest country the world has ever seen. That happens where people have trillions and billions of dollars, and in a year or two, like has happened through the pandemic, double and triple their trillions and their billions of dollars. It's insane. But when you think about what's happened historically, we've got it pretty good. And who's resolved the traumas from 10 generations, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 generations in your or my bloodline? Who's cleaned it up? To be cleaned up. So if you want to comprehend the invisible source of creation, that's what you need to do. You want to really step into relationship with love. So let's see if we can get to that one. From the Greek, blessed are the poor in heart, they shall see God. Pure in heart, they shall see God. Do you think you could get from blessed are the pure in heart to you who have a completely purified mind, you will comprehend the invisible source of creation? Not likely. And then the next Beatitude speaks about what they called the Abde. And Abde, as an Aramaic word, has a component of service. It's like you pay your rent on earth through service. So what this Beatitude says, again, Tuvehun precedes this Beatitude, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession. You who, through service, work effectively to produce, and the Aramaic word here is shlama, the peace and understanding under and in accord with the Creator's will. You will be called the children of God. Now the Greeks, let's see how we can leap from blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God. Do you think you could make the leap to you who, through service, work effectively to produce the peace? What if we had a whole culture? One of the things that I've said for years, when my children were small, we actually started a parent school, and one of the requirements was that each parent had to spend at least one day. We went back to the employers and talked to them, and and implored them to support these people actually raising their own children rather than turning them over to a school system. So the parents were in the school at least one day a week. So they were in service to their own families. And I've suggested to more than one teacher over the years that for every dollar that's spent and every hour that's spent in a school in competitive sports, you look at the size, look at college ball. What if every dollar spent and made in college ball, an equivalent dollar had to be spent in cooperation between these kids and these rival colleges and their communities? How much would the community benefit? So this Beatitude says, those who through service worked effectively to produce the peace and understanding under and accord with the Creator's will, you will be called the offspring of God. Big leak from there, blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God. So who are we? What are we really here for? If we're really interested, and let's go right back to that statement from, oops, it slipped off my page. The statement from Marianne Williamson about the darkness within that needs to be faced and dealt with. It's time for us to wake up to who we are. So the two great commandments of Yeshua, these are a correction. If you look at the Old Testament says you can go kill people, you can kill the dogs, you can kill every man, woman, and child in the community that offended you. That's that old, and people want to take that as gospel. Well, if you want that as your gospel, notice if that's your myth, look at how it's playing out. Look at the threats. I know that one politician shared how, and he's one that wouldn't go along with, nullifying the election. He shared that he actually had to get snipers on the roof of his house to protect him coming home at night because the death threats were so severe. So that's permissible under the myth of the Old Testament. But then Yeshua came along and he said, excuse me, let me bring a correction here. You shall maintain the condition of pure love. The Aramaic word is tidrakim. You shall maintain the condition of pure love for Allah, the invisible source of creation, in your entire mind and with your whole nafshik, your true self, in all your actions, in all your thoughts. This is the greatest commandment. So you're going to maintain this condition of pure love. Hostility or fear can't take you over if that's what you live by. So he gives a correction. He says, folks, I know they told you some crazy junk back then. I know they gave you permission to do horrific things. I give you something new, he says. Your requirement, if you want a human life, you've got to maintain your human life. You've got to keep love active in your mind, whatever your neighbor's doing. And neighbor, by the way, in that language means anybody that you think about. You must maintain your human life. And when you think of the Creator, Allah, the invisible source of creation, and you've got to do it through your whole being. Your true self has to be active in you, in all your actions and all your thoughts. This is the greatest commandment and takes precedent over all. And second, which is like unto it, you shall maintain that same condition, tadrakim, pure love for your neighbor. And in Aramaic, neighbor is not a physical word, it's a mental word. Anybody that you think about as your neighbor. You want to maintain your human life? You can't hold rage toward anybody. If there's rage in you, the rage is in you because it's in you. It's not in you because of what your neighbor did. That was the beauty of what they demonstrated in this film from Disney on Spider-Man, of all things. I mean, what a message to give to kids. They've taken this teaching of Yeshua from 2,000 years ago and put it right into something kids can identify with. The rage and hatred towards someone. And what Yeshua said is, the second commandment is like the first. You shall maintain pure love. In other words, you're going to maintain your human life when you think of anyone. Karavak means neighbor, and that means anybody near or thought about. And as you do that, you maintain your true self. And then he says, upon these two commandments hang the law and its prophets. And the word law in Aramaic is not the rule of a superior. You know, that's another false myth that the Greeks perpetrated on us. You know, the king, he's the source of law. No, the king isn't the source of law. The creator is the source. No, the creator didn't make up a set of rules that you have to follow. It is not the rule of a superior. The word law simply means this is how it works. And anybody that thinks they're out from under this is how it works in the universe, good luck. I want to see you step off a cliff. 2,000 feet straight down to jagged rocks. I want to see you step off and tell me that you're not under the law, under the way it works. We're all under the way it works. I don't care how many times somebody tells you the myth that you're not under the law, that you're free of it, that you can do whatever the hell you want, because let me tell you, you can't. You can't violate one of these laws without paying the price, because it is not the rule of a superior that you can maybe get away with and not get caught. It's just the way it works. So upon these two commandments, and commandments not, you better do this, but just here's how it works. If you want a human life, here's how you get to have one. And the prophets were those who spoke of how it worked and gave people an understanding in very real and practical ways. And what we're looking to do with this teaching is to restore that understanding.